Queensland's Gulf country is as flat as it is spectacular. A lot of the country around here is taken up with cattle properties, but being remote doesn't mean you have to be by yourself. Many people in the outback have come to rely on HF radio.
Good morning, everybody. This is Cairns School of Distance Education, broadcasting on frequencies 5300, 5865 and 11015.
Good morning, Mrs. Ogilvy.
Good morning. Yes, Sophie?
I've got some exciting news for you today.
Oh, that sounds great. What's that, Sophie?
Got a special guest in Bush Tucker Man, Mrs. Ogilvy.
Great, Sophie.
Yes, Mrs. Ogilvy.
Good morning, how are you, Ava?
Very well. Is that the real Hiddins Bush Tucker Man?
Crikey, I hope so, Ava. We're in strife if it's not.
That's great. What are you doing at Rutland Plains?
Well, I'm here at the moment following up the explorer Ludwig Leichhardt, and I find him quite a fascinating bloke because we came through this Rutland Plains area, 1845, round about then, and something rather... I've always wanted to follow Leichhardt's journey because he was so passionate about exploration. On this, his first trip, he took 7 men. Naturalist John Gilbert, Calvert, Murphy and Roper and Philps, and 2 Aboriginals, Brown and Charlie. Charlie was the real character of the expedition, and we catch up with him a bit later on. This amazing journey started in September 1844, when the expedition left Toowoomba in Queensland and then travelled all the way up Cape York, through the Gulf of Carpentaria and on to the British garrison at Port Essendon. The aim was to find a way to the north and to prove the viability of pastoral land for the future. I'm starting this trip here at Rutland Plains because this cattle property on Cape York has a special place in the history of Leichhardt. Up to now, the many Aboriginals they came across were more curious than threatening. However, all that was about to change. What happened next created a whole turning point for the expedition. For some reason or other, and we're not really quite sure about the whole thing, the Aboriginals decided to put in an attack around about 7 o'clock at night. They ended up spearing Roper and Calvert, and they killed Gilbert. Poor old Calvert, he copped a spear through the groin. Stopped him riding a horse for a while, I can tell you. The next day they buried Gilbert, and feeling that they might be attacked again, they decided to move on. Many of the rivers round here already had names, but not all of them, and Leichhardt was pretty keen to fill in the gaps. So the next major river he came across, guess what he called it? There have been some pretty strange things that have happened around this Gulf country, and this train line is one of them. It was built for the gold rush era in the 1880s, and it's only 150 kilometres long. It was supposed to link up with the rest of the Queensland Railway, but it never happened. These days it's mainly used by tourists. Leichhardt had come out from Prussia a few years earlier and immediately set out on short trips to learn as much as he could about the Australian bush. It was his enthusiasm and his new skills as a bushman that would eventually get him through. They'd all been on the road now for 10 months and were starting to feel the effects of what had been a difficult journey. Of course, the longer Leichhardt's expedition went on, the fewer rations and provisions he had. By the time he got round this Gulf country here, he'd run out of salt. It was a great one for scrounging round the countryside, Leichhardt. And round here, he resupplied himself. Apparently he was looking for salt, but some of the men weren't real keen on it. When he bunged it in the stew that night, some of them went crook at him because they reckon he put in too much salt. Anyway, that's it. It was Brown and Charlie's job to find food and to act as guides, but Charlie was a bit cheeky quite often, which caused Leichhardt to sack him one time, only to reinstate him the next day, of course. You know, one of the great interesting things about this Leichhardt expedition is the fact that it was privately funded, not like a lot of the other exploration that was going on at the time. See, people like Major Mitchell and Captain Charles Sturt and Kennedy and those types, they all had government funding backing them. Poor old Leichhardt, he had to crank up the funding himself, so he got a whole bunch of patrons and sponsors. They tipped in money hoping that he might find something. I guess they were interested in grazing country and that sort of thing. And as he went round the place, he named different places after those sponsors and patrons. And you see this creek here, which turns into a river a little bit down the stream there a bit further. This is called Robinson River, and it's named after the bloke Robinson in Moreton Bay, who helped him kit out the expedition in the first place. One of my favourite little rivers, this one. By the time he'd moved around the bottom of the Gulf, he was way behind schedule, and his men were grumbling and wondering if they'd ever get to Port Essendon. He was now heading northwest, where I'm going, to an area that's surrounded by beautiful lagoons. Whenever I'm going to stop for a few days, I like to build a decent camp, which is both simple and comfortable. It's not a bad idea to have something to do two jobs. These wooden planks here hold my jerry cans together in the trailer, but they've got another use, making life in the bush just that bit better. Setting up camp, a lot of hard work at times, but it's really worth it if you're going to stay somewhere for a number of days. This lagoon here is right beside the Roper River. I'm going to have a look around here, because right here, we're right slap bang in the middle of Leichhardt country. There's a few things around here I want to have a look at over the next few days. Leichhardt was said to be a bit of an oddball, but he really was very practical, and his camps were always well organised. He'd occasionally stay for a few days in one spot, so that he could kill a bullock and dry the meat to preserve it. He made sure he wasted nothing. He even collected the fat